Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports, live from our state-of-the-art Pontchartrain production studios. I'd like to say we're having a beautiful day here in New Orleans. A little bit rainy here in downtown New Orleans, but you know, it is at least cooling rain for us here in August. Of course, don't forget we're also live streaming now on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. For those of you that are out and about, feel free to be able to check us out there. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams. The Saints getting ready to start their preseason. The Pelicans in free agency, summer league, we'll get into that. And then also, again, LSU and Tulane in fall camp getting ready to start their seasons. All on tap for us today. And to break it down, one of the best we have in the city, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks as always for joining us on this rainy New Orleans afternoon.
Yeah, it's not bad. I don't complain about the rain, but at this point, you just about expect it every day, right?
No doubt, no doubt. Now, before we get started, you guys are in full-blown football mode over at Fox 8. Tell us about all the shows.
Yeah, we've got the final play on Sundays as always. We're getting ready to bring you the first preseason game for the Saints, visiting the Ravens. We'll have that on Fox 8 on Saturday. We'll wrap it all up on the final play the next day. We've got our first Black and Gold review coming up on Monday, the Overtime Show Tuesday, and then as always, the Final Play app, the Tiger Huddle app, where you can find everything. We're really getting that cranked up. Sean Fazan and I have been doing a number of Saints podcasts from his observations from training camp, and then we've got the final, the Extra Point blog, my fantasy football blog, getting started. Then we've got a fantasy football podcast dropping later today, so a lot of stuff to check out.
Right, and of course, coming up soon for you, and also Sean and Garland, the Football Friday.
Yep, Fox 8 Football Friday. That'll get started the first week of the high school season, and it's fun as always. Every time that show rolls around, it is a fun show to do because we just got so much talent and so many good teams around.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. I mean, look at this year's. This is going to be a lot of fun. This year's class is supposed to be phenomenal.
It is. The next couple of years, to be honest, and I know, if you look at the next 2 years, Arch Manning's the headliner, but there are a number of talented quarterbacks. There's always receivers and corners. The skill positions are great here, and I think, when one school raises their level, another school does as well, and these players, hats off to them because they work out almost year-round now with trainers and stuff. That's why I think you're seeing
7-on-7, right?
Yeah, the level shoot up for these guys, so it's certainly a great time for football players in Southern Louisiana.
Yeah, no doubt. And, of course, a little bit off the beaten path here. Peyton Manning goes into the NFL Hall of Fame this past weekend. Of course, the entire Manning family is there. Archie gets him in, introduced him for his introduction. And then, of course, as they're panning the audience, and even after Peyton had finished his speech, you see Cooper there along with Eli, and you see Arch Manning there, again, watching his uncle go into the Hall of Fame. And of course, you could almost see Cooper talking to him constantly during the induction, talking about, I guess, just, getting his head together, because a lot of people believe that one day he's going to be a pro quarterback.
Look, if there's any family that you believe can continue to put players into the NFL at a high level, from Archie to Hall of Fame sons, because Eli will be in there eventually, yes. And then Arch is certainly on that path, being the top-ranked player in his class now. I have no reason to think Arch Manning won't play in the NFL one day. And just with the drive that they have, it's not always talent. Like, a big part of it's talent, but it's the work ethic. It's doing things the right way and the smart way that family's done well. So I think that's one of the biggest factors for him going forward.
It was incredible to see the different generations for a guy that grew up, again, Archie Manning, again, and coming to the Saints as a rookie, and then, of course, seeing his time here, and then watching the boys grow up. And then, of course, now the third generation here in New Orleans. So interested to see how that plays out, and it's going to be a really good high school football season. Let's talk about the Saints. We'll get into Baltimore. We'll get into training camp in a moment, but the biggest story over the last week has been Michael Thomas. This was, again, started with some national correspondents coming out talking about Michael Thomas, again, not getting the surgery, not returning calls. Jeff Duncan had an in-depth article in the New Orleans Times-Picayune about, again, him ghosting the coaches, not returning calls, not getting surgery in February as everybody thought he was going to get. So again, that he would be ready for training camp. Ultimately got the surgery in June. That was followed up this past week with, again, a cryptic tweet by Michael Thomas. They tried to damage your reputation. You saved theirs by not telling your side of the story. Now, again, this looked like a real impasse between the two. But again, since last night, it's been reported that both Sean Peyton and Michael Thomas have had conversations, positive talks to try to mend fences. This comes on the heels of Ian Rappaport and others, talking about the possibility of a trade with Michael Thomas, which, again, we know is impossible because of the dead money. $8.9 million this year, $22.7 million next year. He is an untradeable player right now for this team. And can you get the value for him ultimately as an injured player without getting on the field and proving that, again, he's still the same player he was before the injury? What a whirlwind deal with Michael Thomas. You've been covering him since he got here, and look, I've heard it from reporters that are in that locker room. He's a different guy than he was when he was here the first couple seasons to now. Absolutely.
And those first couple of years, you don't want to say like money changes anybody, and even right after he got the contract, he gets the contract, he shows up at camp, it's all smiles because you just got made $100 million receiver. But I remember after that first game in 2019, where they beat the Texans in a great game, and Michael Thomas had a pretty good game, and just wasn't. I don't always expect guys to be like bubbly or want to talk to the media in the locker room, but at the same time, we have never pressed Michael Thomas for really tough questions or anything like that, because he's had great games.
Yes.
He's an outstanding player. I mean, every time we talk to him, it's about his connection with Drew, about breaking records, stuff like that, and just to get that kind of cold shoulder, it was like, all right, well, maybe he's not going to be the most media-friendly player, and that is fine, because you do a ton of media. It is what it is.
His prerogative.
Right. But then he has been very, very active with the subtweets and talking on social media going back to that 2019-2020 season, and then all of this drama building up. You look back and you're like, how did it get here? How did it get to the point where this was like a shining example of you work hard and do the right thing and you're rewarded for it? And he was. And he comes out and has a 149 catch year, breaks the record, everything's great, and then one ankle injury, and it's just completely off the rails, from the things in practice last year with C.J. Gardner-Johnson to what Jeff Duncan reported in this offseason. So it's unfortunate. I do hope that, for the Saints' sake, that they can move past it, at least for the time being. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but say the Saints are in a position when Michael Thomas is able to return that they're winning and have a shot at the postseason, you want him to be able to fall back in line with the team and to be able to go forward as, the weapon that I believe he can be when he's completely healthy. So you want to salvage what you can right now, but it's just it's amazing that it got to this point because everything was so good up to this point. And outside of an injury in this back and forth, like there's really no reason for it to have gone this sour.
I 100% agree. And I think that, Peyton likes to say dirty hands, right? There are dirty hands on both sides on this. Michael Thomas, no doubt, again, look, you're a leader. You've been paid a lot of money up front. You're expected to be able to, again, if you're injured, to do what you have to do to get back on the field. Ultimately, they decided not to have surgery during the season, whatever reason that was, okay? Whether it was he wanted to be able to play with Breeze in his last year, maybe the team told him that they thought that it couldn't get any worse than what it is, whatever it was, okay? It's immaterial. At the end of the season, when you got torn ligaments, you're going to have surgery. They did the 1 month situation with the specialist where they felt like, okay, let's see if it can heal a little bit on its own. He misses the February appointment, and then again he's ghosting calls from medical staff, assistant coaches, his coach, okay, at wide receiver, and of course Sean Peyton. Look, somebody should have got on a plane. Miss Benson's got a private jet, doesn't have to be okay, and fly to California and find out what's going on with Michael Thomas. You can't let it get to June and minicamp to see again where he is if he's not returning phone calls. So, yeah, Michael Thomas on one hand should have had the surgery, but the organization should have been a little bit more aggressive in trying to find out what was going on with Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I can't imagine over that month where there's a lot of big decisions being made in terms of how you're going to draft. Like,
no doubt.
Do you draft a wide receiver if you're aware that Michael Thomas is going to need surgery or is delaying surgery or isn't going to have surgery till June? Maybe that changes how you draft a little bit. There's a number of things there that you mentioned that, should have been flags, should have been, we need to go see what's up. Unfortunately, whatever happened during that season, whether it was Thomas not wanting to have surgery, whether it was the team not wanting him to have surgery, once you get to the postseason, that's behind you. It doesn't matter. The point is, going forward, you need to have the surgery. You need to get healthy.
Right.
There shouldn't be I'm going to get back at them at not have surgery because they wouldn't let me have it during the year. I mean, part of the reason he got paid in the first place was because they were in a situation where they couldn't afford to have him out of games. The opportunity, met the Saints Super Bowl window. They needed Michael Thomas. They gave him the big contract that he wanted. Should be smooth sailing going forward. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for them to ask you to be as available as physically possible. I know it's an ask, and I'm not a player. I've never been in their shoes. I'm sure they play through a lot of pain and do a lot of things for these organizations all the time. But when you're in that situation and you have that window open, and they certainly had a chance in 2020, you give it your all. But again, after the season, it's time to reset. It's time to get back on track. And the surgery should have been had. It's unfortunate that it wasn't.
Right. And to your point, as far as the Saints are concerned, drafting a wide receiver, I mean, you knew at that point he had not had the surgery. Pardon me. So either you're drafting a wide receiver, you're extending Sanders with a cap-friendly deal, or you're going out and getting a veteran wide receiver, and maybe, again, you're getting a cap-friendly deal, maybe backloading that, because they did have the cap issues. But you had to make a move and not put yourself in a position where you have undrafted free agents, you're pulling a guy off a lacrosse field, and you're hoping that what you have in place is going to be enough to get it done. Now, it may work out, but you should have headed that off with, again, some veterans out there, because it's slim pickings in terms of the wide receivers that are available right now, as well as cornerback. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But you knew Thomas hadn't had surgery. You knew what the timetable was in terms of getting rehab and getting back on the field. And once he missed that window, and again, that was before the draft and before free agency, you should have reacted.
Well, and I think what the Saints know is what they have in that wide receiver room, and I do think they have talent. I think if Traquan Smith is healthy, he's a talented enough player.
True.
I think they think the world of Marquez Callaway right now. I don't want to use it in the same sentence as Marcus Colston just yet, but at the same time, like, maybe it's that mold. Maybe he becomes that undrafted guy that rises up and becomes a starting wide receiver for a long time in this league. But at the same time, they weren't just boxed in by Michael Thomas. They're boxed in by the fact that they didn't have a deal in place with Ramczyk. They're boxed in by Patrick Robinson. Was he all of a sudden not feeling it? Could he have retired and saved a little bit of money sooner? I don't know. So you've got all these things that maybe if it happens sooner, this is money that you could save. And if they have the money they do right now a couple months ago,
there's no doubt.
You're in a much better situation in terms of maybe you retain Janoris Jenkins, maybe you retain Emmanuel Sanders.
Malcolm Brown.
Yeah, Malcolm Brown. Maybe you're able to make a couple more small moves or a significant move within free agency instead of just trying to keep your own players. So the timing of this offseason has been one of the biggest things, that from Michael Thomas to the arrests to David Onyemata's looming suspension as well. It's just been – it hasn't been the offseason of a team that expects to compete for a championship, in my opinion.
No, I would agree. It's almost – look, I don't want to say like they took a few months off, but it feels like they took a few months off.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, honestly. I mean, you know, I know Peyton had his wedding, and I don't want to lay it on that, but it seems like they were not paying full attention to what was necessary in this transition year from Drew Brees to a post-Brees era. And knowing, again, the issues that you had. Look, the Ryan Ramczyk contract, not getting that done early is mind-blowing, knowing that once you realize that you couldn't get a deal done with Lattimore because of his situation, and you had to get a feel for what was going to happen with Marcus Williams, even though, again, that's not the type of money that you're looking at for a Ramczyk, who you knew was going to be one of the highest-paid players at his position. Now, that really kind of started the dominoes in a negative way for this team.
Yeah, and we'll see sooner than later, you know, what the talent is, what you know, Sean Payton has cooked up once we, you know, get a couple of games into the season. He said for quite a while now that he doesn't see the holes on this roster that others do. He's the coach. He kind of has to say that. I do think he has confidence in his team. But at the same time, maybe it is easy to fall into a little bit of cruise control because not that they've been in cruise control. They've done some really excellent work in the offseason, whether it's been re-signing guys, bringing in the right free agents, and from 2017 to 2020, just pressing all the right buttons to keep this team's window open and to add talent around them. But this was an offseason where if you're going to come out a couple months ago and say we're still in win now mode and we still expect to compete for the division and all this stuff, I think you've got to be a little bit more proactive. You can't just subtract from the depth on your roster and kind of plug holes with, no offense, budget players or undrafted guys or unproven guys and a new quarterback here and there. Like, you don't subtract and then keep that same, I guess, level of expectation. The expectations are going to come down a little bit with that. And so I don't know whether they fell into cruise control or not and just thought it would all be okay and they had the ultimate faith in these guys. But on paper, and I know it's just on paper, this is not the same team. This is not the same caliber of team that we saw for the last 4 seasons.
Chris, you cannot lose the type of talent they lost and think you're going to be the same team. Now, maybe those young players are ready to take the next step. We hope so. Again, the coach will know better than us. We'll see over the next 3 preseason games, and then when we get into the first quarter of the season, we'll be able to tell a lot. But, man, they lost quality players, veteran players at critical positions, and in some cases still have not filled those positions. So we'll see how it plays out. One good thing is Quan Alexander comes back to the fold within the last couple weeks. 1 year incentive-laden contract for $3 million. Obviously, I think that Pete Werner's going to get a chance to be able to play. But again, you have an opportunity now to get a guy that you know that if he's healthy, that second level of the defense is going to be handled, because between him and Demario Davis did a great job last year. Yeah,
and I think that's a contract that works out well for both sides. Obviously, it works for the Saints financially, but for Quan Alexander, it's a team that's probably a little more willing to give him a shot and see what his health looks like and what he can do and what he can become again, because he recently played with them. That obviously worked in their favor. He's a guy that doesn't have to catch up as much as others if you're going to sign a different linebacker, because he knows the system, he knows the personnel around him, he knows Demario Davis. They've paired very, very well with each other. And if he plays well and ultimately proves that he can be healthy for 13 to 16 games, then maybe he's with the Saints again next year. Maybe he goes elsewhere for more money. But I think it works for both sides, and certainly for the Saints, it fills a big need. And if nothing else, fills it this year and gives someone like Pete Werner or Zach Bond, the time to learn under and to grow, and then maybe they step into that role in the future.
Let's talk a little bit about Patrick Robinson retiring. You kind of mentioned it. I mean, and it really kind of out of nowhere. He was running with the first team. Again, you look, age, etc. I was never comfortable with Patrick Robinson being the starter there, but it was what it was. But it hurts because of, again, the lack of depth and the lack of experience in a lot of cases at that position.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if a guy's taking first-team reps and all of a sudden he's not there, that tells you that was one of the guys that you were relying on or thinking would have at least some sort of significant-ish role within the secondary. So that hurts for him to step back. And, yeah, at 34, he's not physically what he once was, and he probably plays better inside. But at the same time, he's guarded a lot of different receivers, positions. He knows the league well. I think there's value in that experience that walks out that door now with him retiring. So that's another obstacle. I will say, from what I've watched with Paulson and Debo and seen in some of our video clips from camp and read from reports, I think he can cover.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's an immediate replacement. I think he's one that may take a bit of time, but I think they're going to be banking on him a little more than they thought they might now.
Yeah. Well, that's where I was going to go next. Is it time to just say, okay, let's throw the rookie out there and let him play?
It may be, but the issue's always been past that, how long are you going to be without Marshawn Lattimore with a potential suspension coming?
Right. Well, I mean, is it?
So do you throw a rookie out there with P.J. Williams, with Prince Amukamara, with another free agent you may bring in? Like, who is going to be out there? And maybe they did see Patrick Robinson playing on the outside because you brought in a guy like Brian Poole, who's more of a nickel corner. So there's a couple of different things they can do, and I think that's the rotation and the position, we'll keep an eye on because we'll see where they put these different guys and have them in the preseason.
Well, the good news, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday on the radio show, is if you're looking to be able to mask deficiencies, and let's face it, right now the cornerback position is a deficiency, and it could be even more of one depending on how long Lattimore's suspension is. The one thing where there is where again you have strength on the defense is at the defensive end position.
You do.
The ability to be able to put pressure on the passer, if they can do this. Now again, last year in a lot of cases, maybe a step behind, more hurries than maybe sacks. Henderson had a great year. But if you can get something out of your defensive ends where they're literally breathing down the quarterback's neck, where they're one of the top teams in terms of sacks, you're going to be able to mask the deficiency on the back end. That's what they really need to do. Because now it looks like the second level may be a little bit more secure with having Quan back. And looks like we'll find out what happens with the defensive tackles in terms of stopping the run. But they can stop the run on first down, put teams in a position where they got to throw the football and get to the quarterback. You may not have as many problems on the back end as maybe we're looking at, because you can scheme your way out of it.
You can, but I still think you're exposed back there, and I still think it's got to work hand in hand to be at the level that we've seen the Saints defense play the last few years, because they've been really, really excellent on that side of the ball, and that has absolutely won them some games, especially late in the year when the offense kind of tailed off. To be at that level, you need that working hand in hand, and I do believe they're good in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I do think they can still generate some pressure there, but if you're exposed at corner and you're playing in a division with Calvin Ridley, a Chris Godwin, a Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, Antonio Brown, like the Bucks.
Right.
I mean, it's a tough division.
Oh, no doubt.
It's a tough league that is very pass-friendly when you don't have guys that can cover.
Which is why, again, you're going to have to get to the quarterback. There's just no other way around it. Based on what you have right now, you have to be one of the teams that's going to be a constant pressure team on the quarterback. And look, on passing downs, you can move Cam Jordan inside. They say Peyton Turner can be moved inside. So again, you go with that NASCAR package. But again, also that is with the team also being able to stop the run on first down, which we don't know because they've lost some really good defensive tackles on this team, and they're relying on some young players to really step up.
Yeah, that's a big hole to fill. I mean, Demario Davis admitted to the first day of camp with David Onyemata going to be out, in addition to Malcolm Brown being elsewhere. That's considerable right there in terms of their run-stopping ability, which, like you said, that gets you in those second and long and third and long situations where you can pin your ears back. Otherwise, it just makes it a long day on your defense.
Based on what you've seen from the wide receiver position, that's another big question mark right now with the youth. We've talked a bit about it. Do you feel comfortable?
I don't know if comfortable is the word I'd use, but I'd say there's potential.
Okay.
Again, Marquez Callaway is a guy that's playing with a lot of confidence right now, and I do think that counts for something. We've seen Traquan Smith, like really since his rookie year, have flashes, have big games.
Yes.
But can he stay on the field? He already missed time in training camp. Deontay Harris, I think, has a growing role. He is one of my favorite sleepers in fantasy football because even in limited action last year, because he was dealing with a lot of injuries, Sean Peyton found ways to get him the ball. I think they can be creative enough on offense with that group to get production.
Add Kamara to the mix as well.
And obviously Alvin Kamara, that's 80 receptions right there. So that almost makes up for not having a big name receiver. But it's still going to have to be something that comes together.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress. It's not hit the ground running. It's we got to see what we got these first few games and kind of fight through it. Right. I think coaching matters, and I think Sean Payton is one of the best, if not the best coach in the league in terms of finding ways to win games with what he has, but it's to a new level this year in terms of that challenge without Drew Brees and some of the guys you had a year ago.
Well, what's been the theme, with young players? Can they get off the jam? Can they get separation? Can they be where they need to be in this timing offense? That's 1, 2, 3. And that's something I guess we'll be looking for a lot in this preseason. We'll see if they have the ability to do that consistently. And if they don't, we may see this team become more of a running team. Okay, and again, they have the backs and they're stable to do that, which leads me to the quarterback position. Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, where do you think they're going? Obviously, again, the next 3 preseason games will tell a lot. But based on what you've seen at camp, what are your thoughts? Everybody's saying there's no front runner here at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come down to preseason games and how they run the offense. Obviously, the results are going to speak loudest, I think, with this battle. And the top factor is, can you get this team in the end zone? Can you keep the offense on the field? Can you move the ball? Do you have command? Do you have poise? Do you have that rhythm and pace that Sean Payton likes to talk about? I don't know if this gets considered, but in my mind, when we talk about the receiver position, that's a little down from a year ago. When we talk about having a new tight end, which Adam Troutman's had a pretty good camp and probably isn't being talked about enough.
Yes.
But when you talk about having to replace some weapons or being down a couple of weapons, it almost leads me to think, do you consider starting Jameis just so you have Taysom Hill as another weapon out there? And he's lost some weight. There is a question of, can he put the weight back on that he needs to play some of those positions?
Peyton said he could this week.
Yeah. So I think you've got that. But I just think you have to consider that Taysom Hill is a reliable weapon elsewhere on the offensive side of the ball. And if it's that close, and I don't know if that's fair to Taysom or not. Life isn't fair. But if it's that close, do you make Jameis the starter just because, hey, Taysom, we're still going to give you snaps at quarterback, but, man, we really need you elsewhere on the offensive side of the ball? I think that should be considered.
I agree. Again, he's a weapon. And the one thing I'm concerned about is the weight loss because of the fact that, again, he was so injured at BYU. And, again, I think the muscle had a lot to do with him not getting injured because he's been a very, very physical player. But, man, you're down Michael Thomas. You're down a bunch of weapons, and he could be a guy that could be a game changer for you at that jack-of-all-trades position. Importance of preseason this year as opposed to previous years?
It's huge. I mean, especially when you're asking new and young wide receivers to continue to prove themselves, when Adam Troutman's going to be getting more snaps, obviously the quarterback position, and just guys getting used to playing with and hearing calls from and going down the field with and being in pressure situations with someone not named Drew Brees. I think it's big for everybody because it's got to fall in line with a new quarterback for a lot of different guys, whether you've been here the last few years or not. It's not number 9 in that huddle anymore. So from that point, yes, and then to just see what guys can do at cornerback, to see their level of comfort, to see how quickly that group comes together. For the veterans and the top-end talent, not looking for much from them. I would rest guys like Cam Jordan and Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore as much as possible.
Yes.
But elsewhere, you want to see as much as you possibly can because this is the most turnover we've seen from this team in a very long time.
Be interesting to see again what the suspensions look like. We know Onyemata's got a 6 game. If you look at history, and of course it came out this morning in the Times-Picayune about the police report on Deontay Harris with the DUI in Baltimore. That's usually a 2-game suspension. And some are saying somewhere between 1 and 4 games for Lattimore. I think a lot of it depends on what happens in Ohio. It's his first time getting in any kind of trouble. More than likely, they're going to be able to plead that down. I don't know how much that means to the commissioner at the end of the day. But again, losing him for 4 games would be tough. Hopefully, it's just a 1-game suspension. But you got some core players that you're going to lose at the beginning of that season.
Yeah, even one or two or whatever it is, you're facing Aaron Rodgers without Marshawn Lattimore. You're facing Aaron Rodgers with some new corners. You're facing Aaron Rodgers in a Green Bay offense that, by the way, has Aaron Jones, who's a tremendous runner, without David Onyemata, and Malcolm Brown's now gone. I mean, it's tough.
Yes.
That first week is going to be tough, and that's ultimately what you're gearing up for right now. So we'll see what happens with those suspensions. You'd like to probably know sooner than later, so you can kind of get it in your head, and it doesn't have this like shock effect when it finally does hit before the season. But either way, that's part of the reason why it's not unfair to be a little bit down on this team and down in the number of wins this year, because they're going to be fighting very much uphill these first couple weeks.
And also, again, saying what you have so that, again, you're not in panic mode here to say, I've got to make a deal because I feel that there is, a need for talent at a certain position. Look, to me, the draft picks are off limits.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what you have this year. You could be a top 10 pick team. You could be a team in the playoffs. You cannot give up draft picks this year.
You can't give up draft picks because the NFL works. Here's how the NFL works, and you know this. I mean, you get your higher draft picks, right? In 2017, the Saints had 11th overall. They traded Brandon Cooks, and they had 32. So they loaded up. They did an excellent job drafting that year. They got Marcus Williams. They got Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round. They got Trey Hendrickson in the 3rd round. Was that year? Yeah.
Yeah. No, 5th round. Was it 3rd round?
Might have been 3rd.
It was the same round. It was the same year.
So you absolutely loaded up that year, and you had your window open of not having to pay players. But now you're in the part where you've got to pay these guys, and they've paid Ramczyk. They're going to pay Lattimore. They've paid Kamara. You paid Michael Thomas. You can't keep paying all these guys and going to free agency and getting talented players.
And then a quarterback too, right?
Yeah, because Jace almost combined their names. Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill are both on expiring contracts. You need those draft picks to rebuild inexpensively. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in this cycle of trying to pay free agents and trying to budget build. You've almost got to hit a reset button at some point. Good teams don't have to do that. That often comes with continuity at quarterback, so we'll see what happens with the Saints. But look, if they go 6-11, 7-10, whatever it is this year, you're going to want to keep that pick because that's ultimately how you're going to be able to build back and get back to the playoffs sooner than later.
100% agree. 100% agree. We'll take a break. We come back. After we hear from our underwriters, we will talk Pelicans, then we'll get into LSU and Tulane football, all that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Our guest today, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. This afternoon, we have Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports joining us on the program. We'll switch gears to the New Orleans Pelicans. Chris, Steven Adams gone, Eric Bledsoe gone, Alonzo Ball gone in the sign and trade that's under investigation for tampering by the NBA. They sent away 2 future number 1 picks. They get back Jonas Valanciunas, Devontae Graham, Tomas Satoranowski, who was rumored to be part of an expanded trade with the Memphis deal, but that did not come to fruition. Garrett Temple. They bring in Trey Murphy III as their 17th overall pick after trading down in the draft out of the lottery. They also were able to bring in Herb Jones with the 35th pick out of Alabama, SEC Player of the Year, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Additions, subtractions, your thoughts on where they are?
It's hard to tell if they are better on paper. Contract-wise, you're definitely better. You don't have any bad contracts.
Right.
Talent-wise, it may be about a wash. I do like what we're seeing from Trey Murphy in the Summer League, so I think having him as a shooter and as someone with confidence, and Herb Jones as someone who's a defensive-minded player, I think that certainly helps and can help in that second unit. We'll see what happens with him, but I think it's a net positive, but I think what we learned from this offseason is the Pelicans have to prove it.
Yes.
They have to prove that they can win before they're going to stand a chance with these big-name free agents. I mean, you had as much money to give as anybody to a Kyle Lowry, and you weren't able to get him to New Orleans. Despite the fact that you have a Brandon Ingram who's an all-star, a Zion Williamson who's an all-star, and really just beginning to tap into his potential. I think it shows that big free agents, and especially ones who are around age 30 and wanting to make another push in their career, they want to be somewhere that they know they can go in and win. And maybe they don't have to do all the work. So the Pelicans, I think with Willie Green, hopefully they can bring that out of themselves and prove they're a winner, and we'll see what happens down the road. But it's not worse than last year, I'll say that. I think it's as much of a clean start as you were going to get in terms of getting rid of those bad contracts, even if it did cost you a couple draft picks.
They were able to move off Wes Iwundu. They moved him to Carolina as part of that Devontae Graham deal. That, along with the Memphis deal, gives them about a $17 million trade exception. They also have the mid-level exception. And, of course, as you mentioned, they have money under the cap now to still go out and get a player. There's been a lot of talk about Lauri Markkanen possibly being sent to New Orleans. I'm kind of mind blown by the fact that it wasn't part of the original trade for Alonzo Ball. And then, of course, there's been a lot of rumors about Buddy Hield returning, again, since it seems that Sacramento's wanting to move on from him. The bottom line is they still need shooters.
Yeah, in this league, you're not going to turn away three-point shooters, especially the shape the Pelicans were in last year. And I know people got hung up on Lonzo Ball and his improved shooting, but that still wasn't touching elite NBA shooting, the type of shooting that they need. And again, I think Trey Murphy helped space the floor. I think Devontae Graham can as well. And I think, as David Griffin's put it, Zion is such a unique player that it is a different challenge building around him. Because do you need a true point guard? I think point guards make this league go, but at the same time, if you're point Zion, then you need a point guard who can shoot and who can shoot really well. And so I think Devontae Graham helps in that regard. But I think it's still very much a work in progress. And if you could add shooters, I certainly wouldn't be complaining. Again, we'll see what happens with Nickeil Alexander-Walker if he continues to develop. Maybe they do have the pieces to be better. This still isn't championship level. They still got some time they still have to grow. But I think ideally you show that growth and you get into the playoffs, and then you go from there and see what else you need. It's a multi-year process at times. The disappointment is you thought the Pelicans could have been, that playoff team that got that experience last year and then go from there. But I think any step forward into the playoffs is good enough to see where you need to get better next offseason as well.
They give a first-round pick that's lottery protected in the Devontae Graham trade. Now, again, if they make the playoffs, obviously at that point that will convey to the Charlotte Hornets. If not, it'll turn into 2 second-round picks, and that means the Pelicans did not make the playoffs. So that's not good news there. The trade for Lonzo Ball, maybe a little light in terms of what you got in return. And of course, it was reported as a 4-year, $85 million contract. It is much less than that now that the terms are out there. Garrett Temple comes in. He's going to a 3-year extension, 2 years guaranteed at $5 million a year. The last year is a team option. Tomas Sadarnowski is on a 1-year, $10 million deal. They get a second-round pick. That particular deal is under investigation by the NBA for tampering, which is kind of mind-blowing considering what the Pelicans had to deal with the Anthony Davis and the Lakers, etc. But your thoughts on the deal itself?
Look, I think the deal showed that Lonzo was ready to move on, and I think the Pelicans, David Griffin said it when he got here years ago. You want people that want to be here.
True.
No matter who that is, no matter what their name is, no matter their level of star power. And the fact that deal was tweeted out at like 5:01 means like Lonzo had a foot out the door.
Right.
Everybody talks in the NBA before it goes final. I get that. But on the other side of that, Devontae Graham, the night that his deal's reported, he's on social media singing about coming to New Orleans and happy to be there.
And he's a Carolina native.
Yeah, in terms of that, I mean, maybe he just wanted to get out of the shadow of a Ball brother too. Who knows?
True. I agree. I believe in that.
So I think there is value certainly in getting guys that want to be here. Garrett Temple wants to be in New Orleans, and to Griffin's point, in the type of culture that he's trying to build within that building, I think that's part of it. But the next part of it is winning.
Yes.
I don't hate that deal. Hopefully, nothing goes crazy with it with tampering, and we'll see what they do with those players and if there's anything left to any other deals left to fit them into. But it's not the worst thing in the world to move on from Lonzo Ball, in my opinion.
The unfairness of the tampering investigation is Rich Paul tweeted this out. He's the agent for Lonzo Ball. If you look at it and you step back for a moment, you know from reports that the Bulls and the Pelicans were very close to a deal for Lonzo Ball at the trading deadline. So one would think that the parameters of the deal were already in place. They probably had to dot some I's and cross some T's at that point. And then there's the other part of this. Wait a minute. LeBron James and Rich Paul, fronts for Rich Paul, and of course the Lakers, and there is never any backlash in terms of, again, the ongoing tampering that happened with Anthony Davis and continues to happen today, which again would really, really make Pelican fans very, very angry if ultimately they are docked a draft pick or, again, fined for tampering after they've been a victim of tampering with, again, a once-in-a-generation player.
Yeah, it's unfair because it's LeBron's league, and he's got one of the most popular agents in his pocket and is pulling strings behind the scenes with Rich Paul that a lot of other people aren't able to do. So, again, tampering is very selectively enforced for whatever reason, and I don't see the need to continue to hurt a team like the Pelicans, who are hurt enough by their own reputation in free agency to dock them picks in the future when they're doing everything they can just to keep building and to hang on to Zion Williamson right now.
Plus, the NBA relishes the legal tampering period. They love this. It puts a spotlight on the league.
It makes free agency so full of drama.
Right.
It is like, must-see reality TV when free agency gets geared up in the NBA. So to have all this stuff out there and to, like you said, to bathe in the drama and welcome it all in and then say, whoa, wait a minute, you actually broke the rules. Yes. It was fun, but you broke the rules. Like, that's ridiculous.
And again, at the end of the day, look, they can go through emails, whatever it is. If these teams were very, very close to the trade deadline, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to be able to look at that as a tampering case. All right, let's talk about the coaching staff. That I want to move on to football. Willie Green is the head coach. He brings in Jaron Collins, former NBA player, been on the bench over at Golden State about 7 years. Had worked with Willie Green for 3 years there. They are very, very good friends as well. Fred Vincent moves up. Teresa Witherspoon moves up on the bench. Mike D'Antoni has been hired as a consultant. Will have a limited role with the team. Your thoughts on the coaching staff as it has been put together?
I think it's the best of both worlds. For Willie Green, he brings in someone he's familiar with, obviously, and has worked with before. On the side of the Pelicans, you keep the assistants that you value. You keep Teresa Witherspoon, which she's obviously very close with some of the stars of this team. Fred Vincent has fixed a lot of jump shots and fixed a lot of free throw shooting, so you want to keep him. And then I think in terms of going with a coach who's the third youngest in the NBA, maybe it makes the front office a little more at ease when you can bring in a Mike D'Antoni who's got a lot of good experience in order to just say, hey, maybe this is the way I do things, or hey, maybe this is a lesson I learned, try it this way, and someone that can kind of help Willie Green along. It's still the David Griffin show, so that's ultimately whose voice matters in this building, but I like what they've done there in terms of giving Willie Green every opportunity to succeed, hopefully do things his way, but at the same time have some experience to lean on.
Let's talk LSU football. Obviously, the big news last week was Miles Brennan breaking his left arm in a fishing trip accident, out 8 to 10 weeks. Obviously, Max Johnson is your starter now. Garrett Nussmeier becomes your backup as a true freshman. Look, we had true freshmen playing last year, so what's the difference at this point? But it is a loss. Miles Brennan is a loss, a huge loss for this team. But on the other side, now you know who your quarterback is. And at this point, there is no competition. He's running with the first team, and you're getting ready for UCLA. Let's talk about the quarterback position first. How much does that affect this team in terms of Miles Brennan out, and now, again, possibly having to go to Garrett Nussmeier if something happens to Johnson?
I'm in agreement. When we talked about it last year, I said Miles Brennan was going to be the starter this year. I still want to see what he can do. I mean, we saw him for 3 games, gets hurt in the Missouri game. He didn't exactly play 3 great defenses, so the jury was still out on him as well. But I was very much interested in the competition. I think the beauty of playing quarterback at LSU, you have so much talent around you in terms of the receivers they bring in. And from everything, the limited video we've seen from camp, they've looked good. Right. I think they've got young talent. So I think it does help that you know who your quarterback is. You've got most of your offensive line back, and you can prepare it going forward. But you did want to see that competition between the two. I do think I'd be comfortable with Max Johnson, though. He showed the confidence. He showed the poise. He's almost like hearing him talk in an interview, he's almost too serious sometimes. But he's a guy who's about business, and he wants to raise LSU's level. So I think he can be the right guy for the job.
Offensively, talk about this team. Question marks at the running back position, even though there's talent there. Question marks at the wide receiver position, even though I think there's enormous talent there. I think people are getting a little bit crazy, worried about the wide receiver position, because I think that you look at the number of players that are there. Somebody's stepping up. Somebody's going to be there, and going to be. They're going to have multiple players that can play well. The biggest question to me is the offensive line, as it's been. But what are your thoughts on this offense as they get ready to take on UCLA?
Well, I would love to see the running game be able to develop. I don't think this is a team that if you're going to emulate what Joe Brady did, you're not asking your running backs to do a ton, but you're asking them to make the plays that are there. You're asking them to be able to take advantage of the tempo and the pace and going no huddle. And when you go no huddle and just do an inside zone, like, you've got to be able to pick up yards. You've got to be able to make guys miss. You've got to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield.
Pick up the blitz.
Yeah. I think I would like to see John Emery finally break out and be that versatile running back that we saw him coming out of high school. I think it's there for him. I think bringing in, and I hate reverting back to the fact that it's like Joe Brady's offense, but again,
there it is.
Bringing him in and getting him. Bringing in Jake Peets and getting your running backs within that offense where everybody seemed to flourish, I think can help. And it seems like the communication is a little bit better there on this side of the ball this year. So I'd like to see Emery break out. I think Ty Davis-Price looks like he's in a little bit better shape and can do the same. But that would be where my biggest question mark is. Can these running backs kind of get back to what we saw in 2019, where Ty Davis-Price had some great games and some great performances, and so did Chris Curry. Even though he's not there. So I think there carries for these running backs to make progress with.
Offensive line, is that a concern of yours?
Well, you lose your left tackle, it's a little bit of a concern. Seeing Dari Rosenthal gone, that is a bit of a concern, but I think that's something that's a little to be determined. I'm not overly concerned about it right now. It sounds like they've improved there as well, and I think there's a bit of familiarity there from a year ago. So I think that helps in terms of Max Johnson's development.
Jack Besh is said to be a guy that's going to play a lot of tight end for this team as a freshman. I mentioned what I thought about the wide receiver core. Your thoughts?
I think he's an option as more of an athletic wide receiver. I don't know that he gets a ton of snaps, but depending on the situation, I think he's certainly someone that can come in and make plays and just add another option, a la maybe a Thad Moss, who was able to make some plays downfield. I think that's certainly a role for him. Don't know if he's your every down blocking, Y tight end that is going to be in there, quite as much, at least as a freshman.
Right. How about the wide receiver position?
Wide receivers, I'm thrilled about Kayshon Boutte and seeing if he can pick up where he left off. Obviously, he's got a bit of a rapport with Max Johnson, the way they finished against Florida and Ole Miss. But from Malik Neighbors to some of the other freshmen, Jure Jenkins and Jontre Kirk, like there's a lot of guys that I think you've got a good mix of experience, but freshman wide receivers have shown the ability within this offense to be able to make some big plays. And I think, look, if Jake Peets can really emulate enough of what Joe Brady did, there are catches to be made and there are big plays to be made if you find the right guys for the right spots.
Defensively, we're hearing all the great things right now, again, about the change in the coaching staff, the guys that came back on the defensive line, bringing in 2 guys in terms of transfers that can play that second level of linebackers, and then, of course, a rejuvenated secondary. What are your thoughts?
I'm excited about the secondary a lot, and hearing good things about Jay Ward is certainly welcomed. But having Eli Ricks and Derek Stingley at corner, I don't think we talk enough about Eli Ricks and what he was able to do as a freshman, and obviously having a healthier Derek Stingley will go a long way. That opens up the ability for you to leave those guys on an island and bring lots of pressure, and I think that's something that LSU wants to do, and I think that's something they can do, not to mention you've got a defensive coordinator that works well with secondary. So I'm excited about what they have at that position and the ability to, look, any step forward is going to be better than what we saw a year ago, and I think the talent is certainly there to do so, like the experience they have coming back along the defensive line as well to add pressure.
You've had a chance to be able to get to Green Wave practice and see what's going on there. For the Tulane fans out there, what have you seen? It's
a deeper team. They're 8 or 9 deep along the offensive line. You've got truly the best quarterback you've had in a number of years in terms of Michael Pratt, not only talent-wise but experience-wise, with continuity. You're not coming in guessing, is Jonathan Banks going to be the guy and he eventually gets replaced? Is it going to be Keon Howard? What's Justin McMillan going to be? It's Michael Pratt. He is the guy, and he's got a lot of talent around him. Love what they've got at the running back position with Tyjae Spears and Cam Carroll. They've got too many wide receivers to name, but they can all go up and make some plays. They're good at tight end as well. I think the biggest thing, not giving up the big play on defense. They were last in that category a year ago. But I do think the experience of losing some of those very close games last year and eliminating some of those mistakes, they have the ability to turn 2 or 3 of those losses into wins, and all of a sudden you're talking about 8, 9 wins for this Tulane team. I think that's on the table. I think that's possible. It's just a matter of capitalizing and just winning some of those smaller plays that they've found a way to lose in previous years.
Defensively, they lose a couple guys along the defensive line to go to the NFL. Can they rebound from that?
It's a lot to ask to replace, guys like Cam Sample and I'm
Johnson.
blanking. Yeah, but I think at the linebacker position that can be a strength with Dorian Williams, Nick Anderson, and they've got a couple guys behind them as well. Still haven't gotten a ton of time to look at what they've got in the secondary. I think that's an area that needs to improve as well because I think it kind of goes underrated. Some of the guys they've sent to the NFL out of that group the last couple of years, Perry Nickerson and guys like that. So certainly that's an area to improve. But I think if they do that, again, they stand a chance to win a few more games.
It's interesting, mirror images, both LSU and Tulane with new coordinators on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I think that goes to show that sometimes you're as good as your coordinators. I think Ed Orgeron is a coach that is going to be as good as his coordinators. He can get his guys to run through a brick wall, and he says the right things and gets them fired up. But if there's not a plan in place, if there's not an Ensminger and a Brady or a Dave Aranda who is a mastermind on that side of the ball, I don't know that Ed Orgeron's the guy to exactly come in and fix things. So it's finding the right guys. I think this is definitely a step up from Bertolini. And if you get anything close to what Joe Brady had with Steve Ensminger a couple of years ago, I think you're good on that side as well.
Interesting with the Southland Conference this year, with again all the
Very.
Texas schools moving on. Nichols, Southeastern picked to be 1-2. It'll be a different conference with I think Nichols and Southeastern playing twice this year, right?
Yeah, Nichols and Southeastern play twice. Southeastern will face McNeese twice. They'll face Northwestern State twice. Nichols has a couple of repeat performances or repeat matchups on their schedule as well. So it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward, or if they can get some more teams in there. You're gonna miss you miss the matchups with Sam Houston State. Like that was always a big one for each of those teams. But it will be fun to see these teams match up twice. And these are some good teams. They've got some guys. It is, I mean, especially with a lot of the Texas schools gone, it is firmly Nichols or Southeastern's conference to lose. One of those two teams that bring back their quarterbacks and a lot of experience will be the winner there. And I do look forward to seeing two matchups between them.
Speaking of changes in the conference, obviously with, again, the shuffling of conferences now we're seeing, especially with Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC and then it being an arms race. I'm interested to see again where the AAC ends up, whether they're able to absorb Big 12 teams, where they're going to be absorbed elsewhere, what's going to happen there. This could be a huge step for the AAC.
I would love to see them take in some of those Big 12 teams.
Yes.
I think they have earned it with the teams that they have and the level they've played at, from a Cincinnati to Tulane becoming a 500 or better team that's played in a couple bowl games to the Central Floridas and South Floridas. They have earned the right to be considered a bigger, better conference, and I think taking in the right Big 12 schools can absolutely put them on that Power 5 level, which would be exciting to see. You'd love to see some of those matchups. You'd love to see them expand with some big football schools, especially in Texas.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen over the next year or so in terms of where the conferences are going to be. Chris, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Of course, man.
Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports. Remember, the Saints are on Fox 8 this weekend, so you'll be able to check that out, pregame, postgame. They'll give you the whole 9 yards, and, of course, finish it up with the final play on Sunday. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there are plenty of ways to catch our program now. Of course, we're live streaming on the WLAE-TV YouTube page at 1 p.m. on Thursday. Our first rebroadcast is 6 p.m. every Thursday night right here on LAE. 10 p.m. on The Deuce, WLAE-TV 2. Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock on WLAE-TV. And then, of course, Saturday morning at 2 a.m. on The Deuce. And then we finish it up at 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. Always at ericasher.com, always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page, always on our social media platforms, at Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook. Also, catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM, weekdays 4 to 6, taking you home. Also on the Anchor app is where you can catch our podcast. You can also check us out on the live stream as well. And, of course, the iHeartRadio app and the TuneIn Radio app are great ways to take the program with you. A special thanks to our underwriters who make this show possible. We appreciate each and every one of them. Please support those underwriters. And, of course, also the WLAE production staff who do a great job each and every week producing this program. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Will Ingram, as far as Alex Chacon, and, of course, the best director in the business, William Hill. For Chris Hagan, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.